Vivek Sundaram combines the thrill of motorcycle adventures with the insights of coaching. He believes that rather than sit in classrooms and workshops, there's much to be gained by discovering things about oneself, by being in scenic surroundings and welcoming unexpected encounters. Welcome to My First Job, where we find out what drives people, how luck plays a role, and the lessons they've learned. This is episode 72, and like every interesting career journey, it's full of twists, turns, and insights. My name is Venu Gopal Nair. I'm the host of this podcast and CEO of Ideascape Communications, an advertising agency into branding, creative, and design. So settle in, sit back, and enjoy the conversation. Vivek, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, sir. Pleasure being here.
Okay, Vivek. So, where did this journey begin? Because this, in your case, is not just a metaphorical journey, it is an actual journey on the motorbike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um, so this is something I share in my introduction, a lot of workshops I do. And this is
right.
a story that kind of came to me uh, probably around 8, 9 years ago when I was doing a workshop on storytelling and I was figuring out what would be my introduction. Uh, I realized almost around 27 years ago, I was almost 15 then, 10th standard. I remember early this one morning, it was a Sunday, and we had a function at home. So uh, I woke up and I woke up to my dad starting his motorcycle. It was a
Okay.
KB100 Bajaj motorcycle, and he was about to take off to the store. So I went running downstairs. I asked him, "Can I join you?" And he said, "Sure." And I always loved to ride with him. I remember this day specifically because I sat with him and we are riding on the motorcycle. I looked at him and I said, I pat on his shoulder and said, "Can you teach me how to ride?" And being the person he is, he just stopped and he said, "Hop on." Uh, and back in the day, Bangalore, the place we lived in was outskirts and empty roads. So I rode the motorcycle all the way to the store. Took me a matter of seconds to kind of really pick it up. And while coming back again, I told him, "Can I ride?" He said, "Sure." He was holding these two big covers sitting behind me and we rode all the way back home. And as I took a right turn to my house, I saw my cousins, my relatives had come in, some of them. So I started kind of revving it a little more and going a little faster. And in the nth moment, I realized I had to stop the motorcycle and my muscle memory came into picture and I pressed both the levers on the handlebar. Forgot
Okay.
the rear brake on the foot peg, right?
Oh,
Bike skidded, I fell, scraped my hip. Uh, and the next thing I know, I stood up, dusted myself, looked behind me where dad was, and our pal had jumped off the motorcycle.
so his
And
responses are obviously pretty good.
yeah, his were not mine. So I remember that evening having a conversation with him, and I said, how could you do this? You're teaching me how to ride a motorcycle for the very first time, and you let me fall down, and it was so embarrassing. And I think that was my first failure in motorcycling. I think that's where I learned from my father that falling does not stop you, but everything you learn is progressive. It takes years to get to a stage. You never become an expert, but to even learn and build, I think it takes a lot of time and time investment, efforts, right? So I think that's where everything started for me. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So from KB100, which is what you first rode, what
Mhm.
have been the various other bikes that you have driven over the years?
Oh, I've ridden 50cc mopeds to scooters to uh, electric scooters to a Triumph Rocket, which is I think around 1500cc. Uh, I've ridden Triumph 800 motorcycles, BMWs, the Africa Twins. So yeah,
Okay.
quite a few.
So you've always got your sort of inspiration from two-wheelers rather than four, or is it that you prefer bikes over the car?
Um, Machines overall. I think I've always kind of really uh, inspired me, motivated me, excited me. However, two wheels is a lot more because I watched this video of one of the photographers. She was a very famous photographer for Vogue
Right,
back in the US, and she spoke in one of her documentaries. She spoke about how her life she sees it through the frame, right? Uh,
right,
and I see it through the bubble that I'm in when I'm on the motorcycle because
right,
everything around you is that bubble. You can sense, you can smell. So for me, everything comes together on a motorcycle, right? So
right.
that's my flow. If you look at Ikigai, that's my flow. That's my zone when I get onto a motorcycle. So yeah, I think bikes.
I- I'm no major motorcycle enthusiast, but I remember back in the day, we had to do this shoot for a bike called Fury, which didn't really do too
Ah,
well. You
ah.
remember the Fury, right?
Yeah. I do. I do.
So we were shooting for that particular bike on the Nandi Hills stretch. So there was a
Nice.
point
Okay.
at which we said, okay, drive the vehicle, and so we had things like, uh, you know, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, 60 to 0 in 3 seconds, something like that, or two and a half
Ah.
seconds. Then we
Uh-huh.
had Bull by the Horns. So
Hmm.
all of these were shots taken, and
Wow.
I remember getting a feel of that sheer raw power, because like you said, if the road is completely open and you open up the throttle,
Yeah.
you're in a different world for that short while. I mean, it's not as if
Abs-
you will come back to earth, hopefully not tumble over, but
Yeah.
that feeling is not something that, yeah, ever gets old. It's something that
Yeah.
you can repeat time and again and again.
Yeah.
The other question which I wanted to ask you is, um, do your best ideas come to you while you're riding?
Um, so I can put it this way.
Uh,
My best ideas come when I get off the motorcycle because the motorcycle itself kind of declutters everything else for me.
right,
So
right,
it's just like when you're really focused on something and you're uh, really working hard on something, the moment
right,
you take a break and come back, kind of you
right.
have new ideas flowing in. I think that's what the motorcycle does for me. It helps
Okay,
me declutter.
okay. So we'll come back to the motorcycle, but we'll start with where the clutter in life begins. What
Sure.
was your, what did you qualify for in terms of education, and what was your first job?
Oh, education. I did my BSc in computer science and I dropped out. I
Okay,
did my bachelor's in IT, long distance, and somewhere in the last year I again dropped out.
okay,
Uh, so actually, I'm an undergraduate, but eventually I kind of got to a space where I realized academics is not for me. Uh,
okay.
I think that's when I started working. Joined call centers and
Sorry,
BPOs.
but what, academics is not your thing because you felt bored by study in class, or you felt that this is not taking you anywhere?
There's nothing practical about things, right? And I think
Okay,
that's why I like motorcycles. I'm very kinesthetic, right? I'd like
okay,
to experience everything. I learn from experience. I learn from doing something. And classes or academics just put me in a spot where I also would see teachers, lecturers just write something from their book onto the board. And you're never supposed to ask questions because if you do, they push back. They ask you a difficult question and they kind of embarrass you in front of the audience, right? Um,
okay,
Somewhere I think that's what probably was a disconnect. Uh,
okay.
but again, that didn't stop me though. So I still figured out. I became a trainer eventually. So I think somewhere
Yeah.
the
You
kinesthetics have.
understood what needs to draw
Yeah,
people in.
yeah.
So then, what was your first job in a call center?
Yes, my first job I remember was for Aditya Birla. They're called Minax right now, but back then it was called Transworks
Okay,
in Bangalore, and it was a call center where we're dealing with uh, credit protection plans for an American bank. I was into sales. Uh, Worked there for probably around 6 months, and I think I couldn't deal with the graveyard shifts. It was too much for me. I like to sleep early and wake up early, and graveyard shifts were
okay,
just not me. So I kind of took off.
And the job itself, did you find that it was difficult, or you felt it was very repetitive? What really was the job about? I assume that the interviews were not very detailed because it was one of those things which was entry level. So the questions asked were pretty uh, normal. Do you remember what happened?
Oh, I do. My interview was the first round was more about getting to know me and what my aspirations
Right,
were, and the second round was more about what do you call them? Um, it was a debate kind of a thing where
right.
it group discussion. That's what they called it.
Group
They
dynamics,
put you in
yeah.
a group. They throw in
Right.
a question and they expect you to yell and scream. I don't think I fared all that well because I am an introvert. I'm fairly I don't know. I don't like to put throw my weight around. I just
Okay.
like to hold back, and somehow I got through. I probably answered one of the questions that they asked me is, uh, do you like adventure? Do you like taking risks and stuff? And I said, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Okay.
then they said, if you go on a tour, what would you do? I said, I would plan, I'd book a hotel, blah blah blah, which is me. And they said, how do you? You said you take risks, which means you just go all out, and now you're telling me you plan everything. How does that come together? I think I still remember my response. I said I'd like to take calculated risks. While I'm an adventurer, I don't want to just jump into the well,
Right.
but I would love to take calculate. I think probably one or two of those answers kind of really connected with them.
Okay.
And since it was a telesales job, I think that really helped. Uh,
Right.
yeah. But going back to your question about what was the experience in the job, uh, it was exciting because every customer, I learned a lot of abuses because I would get abused constantly on the call. It was America's, and whenever you call them, they would get 100 calls. And sometimes you're calling towards the end of the month, the number of customers deplete. So you're calling the same customers back to back, and they're getting very annoyed. So that was one. But again, I realized one thing that I can't fake because once you complete a sale, there was a paragraph that you had to read out for quality verification. And there are a lot of people who would read it in a manner that they're fast, the words are clear, but the customer on the other side would probably not understand. The only thing that they would get is their 14-day cancellation period. But I
Okay.
wouldn't do too many sales because I'd be very clear in reading it out very slowly to the client, right?
Okay.
Probably one reason I didn't do well. Yeah,
Okay.
that was my first experience.
Okay. So you didn't like the graveyard shift and then you decided to move on. What
Yeah.
was it that happened next?
I moved into a EMEA shift for another call center, a small one in Bangalore near BTM layout back then. Um they were servicing UK customers, uh, and I got an experience to work with selling leased telephone lines for British Telecom. I sold 3G mobile phones when 3G mobile phones were not even there in India. Uh,
Right.
and I sold mortgage plans. So
Okay.
I think varied industries, different products that I understood, the market for it is what I understood. I understood some perspectives from the client and customers. So yeah,
Okay.
so I think yeah,
Yeah, because one of the things about sales is that you have to figure out which buttons to push. And you also
yeah,
know that on the other side, whether the person is listening, not listening, if the moments of silence also can be interpreted just as well as things that people say. And I think that's something that people who are into sales manage to get as a matter of course, because the more people you talk to in any given day, so if you're making 40-50 calls a day, it means you're getting 50 reactions. And very few people talk to that many people on a normal basis, because you interact with people in your office and then maybe you make a few calls. But I think people in a call center tend to end up speaking to several different people about the same thing.
oh
So
yeah,
in a sense you get a feel of what is this market about, and almost as if from the first line over the month you learn to figure out, okay, this is the way to diffuse the situation, this is
Absolutely.
the way to manage it, all of those.
Absolutely.
And I don't think these are sort of reactions or responses that come out of a training manual. They come out of whatever you do.
Absolutely.
So you
I
can
agree.
have a manual, but unless you immerse yourself in the sale, you would not know what is it that's actually going on. And some people can
Absolutely.
articulate it better. Some people may not be able to say it as much. So, okay, you did a couple of these call center jobs, and what was the progress of the career next?
I think it was a great realization after my second job that I'm really bad at sales. Because one of the turning points for me was the first sale I made in the company, where I sold a 3G mobile phone to an old lady who was earning a pension in the UK. She was in the border of UK, England, and Scotland or Ireland, somewhere there, right? And she was earning a pension of £30, and the 3G mobile phone itself was worth £30 a month. And she
Wow.
actually bought it. Uh, and after I sold that, I felt very guilty about doing it. Um,
Okay.
and we are clicking. It was a new process, and we are clicking probably one sale a week. And mine was the first one for the entire project. So on one side, I was happy. On the other side, I was feeling very guilty. And then my manager walked up to me and handed over a 500 rupee note saying for making the first sale.
Okay.
And that really guilt tripped me. I think somewhere I felt very guilty about selling that. It wasn't worth it. And probably that's where things changed for me. I think I realized then that sales is not something I'm good at. So that's when I quit. I For the first and last time, I had a month's break where I found another job, and I've then moved to Dell Computers, Dell International Services in Bangalore. Again, it was a technical call center, but I moved in as a tech support person, which was more
Okay.
logical, which was more relatable for me.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
But technical support is also trying to figure out what exactly the other person is doing wrong, right? Because they'll give you an end result, but you have to sort of diagnose what has he or she done in order to get the machine into this particular problem.
absolutely. I think that's what really, even today, the logical thinking aspect of what I do on a daily basis, even problem solving or probably coaching or training, I think all of this comes from that understanding of technical support because Dell had, I'm still sure that they have something similar to that. They had something internally which was a very robust system uh, where all you had to do is type in the problem. It would give you a series of steps. All you need to do is follow the steps and keep putting checkboxes. And once you reach a particular point, there's no more solution. There's only a replacement. Or halfway through, the problem gets fixed. And you
Okay.
do it so many times that it becomes it comes very naturally. So
Okay.
even today, just to give an example, even today, if there's a cab guy who calls me up and says, I'm here and I don't know how to get you a place. I think the
Okay.
same logic applies there. First, understanding where he is. Is a park on your left? Is it on your right? you
Okay.
know, so
Okay.
so I think the logical approach of it was what helped me, and because of my liking towards technical uh, side of things, so I think the logic really appealed to me, and that's where I think
Okay.
I thrived. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. No, that's an interesting insight because giving directions, everyone assumes is fairly easy because they're speaking from a position of, I understand the map. But
yes, yes,
how is the person who's currently in that place, because it's new to them, how are
yeah,
they interpreting it and how is it coming forward is not something that they can tell you with absolute authority. So, like you said,
absolutely,
establishing whether they are on the left or right, are they going in the other direction or are they coming towards you?
yeah,
And which is the
yeah.
point at which they have to take turns. All of those, like you said, are things that you break down. Okay, so this was finally something that fit in with your worldview of
Yeah.
how a job should be done, or how a solution should be arrived at. So what happened post that, or what are the things that happened while you were on that job?
When I was in Dell, there was
Ah,
this rule that, or there was this uh, internal uh, thought that they'd accepted that after 9 months of working in a particular project, you can apply for the next IGP, your
okay,
internal job placement. And I was new, I was performing pretty bad, but since I'd completed 9 months, I went ahead and applied. And
okay,
applied for the same job, I think 4 times over the 3.5 years that I was there, 2.5, 3 years I was there. And I got rejected every single time.
okay,
And while I was doing that, I met some great people. There's this gentleman called Ashok Kumar, who was one of the senior area managers. And he was very, I walked up to him and he was like 3 levels above me. And he listened to me and he said, let's find a job for you. Let's get you promoted. Let's get you moved into that role. And he really would send me mails about, this is a new IGP, you want to try? This is a new IGP, you want to try? And I think he was a very inspirational leader. And after I got promoted and moved to another job, there was this other gentleman, Rajshekar Reddy. I'm still friends with him. And he was one of the directors in ISB. And today he works in Chennai in one of the B schools. Uh, and he kind of really, because my charter was I came through HR, came into training, I went to transition, then got onto the floor. And I want to, for some unknown reason, I want to follow the same pattern out, right? So go back into transition, then into training, then HR and out. So my HR was a final goal for me in my uh, internal development plan, IDP. And my manager, Rajshekar Reddy, he looked at it and he said, hey, why don't you, try out for training? And he put me into a 1 week train the trainer program, right? And that's the one behind me. I
okay,
got certified as a Dell trainer, and
okay,
that changed everything because suddenly I realized that I don't need to take calls, I don't need to solve people's problem, but I can help more people think like how I do, right?
okay,
So that was, I think, the shift where I moved into training and development. And this was also not my realization. Rajshekar, he actually saw that in me and he kind of moved me into that role. And that really, that's where I thrived. That's where I
okay,
really
okay,
started thriving. Yeah.
okay.
And
No, like you said, there are two facets to this. One is that you realize what you're good at yourself, or there's someone else who takes a call on you, takes a risk on you, and
absolutely.
then things change altogether. It's
Yeah.
almost as if those people have an uncanny ability to figure out what
Oh,
you
yes.
will be good at,
Yeah.
which you may not be able to diagnose yourself. Okay, there
Yeah.
is a percentage of luck involved there because you have to come across people
Absolutely.
like that in the first place.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's not
Absolutely.
enough for you to, yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not going to run into this person at a party and then they'll diagnose what the issue is. It
No,
has
you
to be
may.
within a work environment. Yes.
You may, but if there's an opportunity of conversation, you just
Yeah.
really need to embrace it, I guess, and that's when luck
Right.
strikes
Right.
you.
Right.
But if you just walk away from it, I don't think you get lucky.
Very true. So, were you continuing to use your motorcycle or drive around at that point?
Oh
Was that a
no,
parallel track in your life?
absolutely not. Just when I joined Dell, I remember on Bangalore, the golf course road. One evening, I was going to a friend's place and it was raining, pouring very heavily. And I'd stopped my motorcycle, which I was riding, and I stood below a tree right next to a golf course. No other shady area or no other place where I could kind of uh, not get drenched in the rain. And suddenly, there's a car which went by, and there's a puddle of water right in front of me, and he splashed water all over me. And I was fuming at that time. So basically, that's around the same time when my dad retired. So he gave me some money, and I bought myself my first car. Uh, it was a Maruti Suzuki Alto, which I bought, uh, and I stopped motorcycling after that. Completely stopped. So,
Okay.
and interestingly, I gifted my motorcycle to a friend of mine who was going to college at that time. So I said,
Okay.
"Your motorcycle is not working, so use mine." So I serviced it and gave it to him.
Okay. Okay. So we'll come back to, the point at which the motorcycle plays a bigger role in your life again and
Yeah,
combines seamlessly with your affinity for training. So,
yeah.
the course of Train the Trainer, did you find that to be something that was Useful, interesting.
Oh, yeah. Um, I learned a lot in that whole process of how to present myself. For the first, and the weird part is I used to have long hair, right? I
Okay.
used to almost look like Jesus, and with a French beard and long hair. I'd grown it for 3 years almost, and when I still remember when the first day when I entered the training program, the facilitator looked at me and said, "Okay, so you want to be a facilitator." However, Dell had a very liberal culture. They were not uh, too finicky about how you dress and things like that. So I used to always be in loose t-shirts and jeans, right, waist jeans. And for the first time, I wore pants, trousers, and a shirt with long hair. Very weird combination, but I still remember the feedback I got saying if you could just probably work on your grooming, you would have a lot more impact. But I think I was what 23, 24. Uh,
Okay.
I really didn't care much about what he said, but yeah, but there are a lot of insights. They also recorded what I did. They gave us the CD, which I had for the longest of time, and I used to watch it. So yeah, so it had a huge impact on me. Yeah.
So, what is the feedback that they gave you when you watched that video? What is it that they
Mhm.
told you, and what did you take from it?
I think uh, a couple of things that they mentioned was one, I was going too fast. Uh, Two, I was told that you need to when you're explaining a concept, you need to use in some examples to kind of simplify the whole perspective, right? So that you're not presenting because you have to showcase yourself. You're presenting because there's an audience listening to you and they need to understand. So you need to match it according to what their needs are. And a couple of things I got as feedback also was that I was good in my presence of mind while I was standing there.
Right,
I could respond quickly. I think
right,
on my feet. I was
right.
spontaneous. And I think back then I was also quite humorous.
Okay,
So I think that was a add-on for a facilitator. However, not too detailed, but because it was technical training, they were not too much about the facilitator. It was more
yeah,
about how to deliver a technical topic to your audience, right? So
okay.
while feedback was good, I think uh, it was interesting to see myself with long hair standing there and talking, right? Yeah, yeah.
So, the Dell training bit launched you, or did you continue in the same position for a few years, or what happened from there?
So that's where everything changed. So Dell, I think it always happens, right? Whenever you try to accomplish something, it gets either dragged or taken away from you, and the struggle
Right,
is to get back at it.
back to where it
So
is. Yes.
yeah, so I became was certified as a Dell trainer, but probably 2 or 3 months later, there was a downsizing which happened. There were a lot of reshuffling which happened in the organization, a lot of org changes. And what they came up with was the level at which the trainer level started was moved 2 levels above. So I had
Okay.
to work almost 3, 4 years to get to the trainer level. And again, luck by chance, a colleague of mine had moved out, joined a training company, and he said, I can refer you.
Okay.
And I gave an interview, took a couple of months, and got the job. So I was a consultant now, which was scary because the company was in Gurgaon. I'd never traveled out of Bangalore, and I'd be still working in Bangalore, but working with an organization based out of Gurgaon, and I would be
Right.
traveling and training. So yeah, so that's how the shift happened. Back in I think this was 2006, 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, how long did the Gurgaon phase last? That's where you went from there.
Oh, that was the longest of time. I think the longest I've worked in any organization. So that was almost 10 years, 9.5 years I was there with them. Uh,
Okay.
Grew through the ranks, lot of changes, lot of training.
Which company was this?
This was a company called Chrysalis, based out of Gurgaon.
Chrysalis.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, and
And
and I
what kind of training there?
behavioral, mostly behavioral training programs. I did a lot of
Okay.
work with organizations across industries,
Okay.
be it banks, aviation, insurance, ITES. So it was all of it. You know, we're doing
Okay.
programs like stress management, communication skills, leadership skills,
Okay.
coaching. So a lot of soft skills
Okay.
and behavior. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. But 9 years, because until then, I think what you said was you just stayed with a company for about a year or two. So
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
there was something in that company which kept you going.
yeah.
What do you think it
Uh,
was?
I think I was too busy. They kept me busy. I think the interesting part about that journey was I would I got to work with different kinds of people, different
Okay.
industries. Everything was a learning, uh, and I think I also grew up the ranks, and
Okay.
the senior leaders somewhere acknowledged what I was doing and my loyalty and everything else. So I realized a lot about myself in that journey, and I was
Yeah.
appreciated for a lot of things. Right. I think that's what probably kept me going. And I was training probably 10, 15, 20 days in a month and traveling. And it used to be hectic. And I never got a chance to attend interviews. So, yeah. So that's what kept me going, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I think that's the good part, right? When you find something that you're good at and you like what you're doing and you're learning, you
Yeah.
can't really say that, no, there is something bigger, there is something better, there is, because at the end of the day, there is a point at which you have to stop to smell the flowers and figure out if this is the place that you want to actually be there for a little while, because
Yeah.
keeping on moving, it takes time to get used to a place, it takes time to get used to the job. It
Yeah.
also means the time at which you add value could be about 6 months, 1 year down the line, because until then you're kind of trying to figure out what you should be doing, and then
Correct.
it comes into. Okay.
Yeah.
So then when did the bike come back into your life?
Uh, um, that's tragic actually. What led to it? So 2014, while I was with Chris Alice, I lost my father.
Oh,
2014 Jan,
okay.
and at that moment, I think probably a few months later, we are in the process of selling our existing house. Everything happened all of a sudden. So I'm the only child. So I never had to take up these responsibilities. So I had to take care of mom, sell the property, be careful enough to invest it in the right manner, invest in another property, and kind of really build around everything. And loss of my father was, I think, big because he was the guy. He was my friend in all its true sense, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot changed after that because I started realizing that there's a lot more that I need to take care of now. So suddenly overnight, the weight of was on my shoulder. I had to take care of mom. I had to take care of my family. So there's a lot happening, and I was trying to kind of figure things out. And one of the moments we kind of were clearing out the old house, and I was coming back home, and I just took a detour, went into the KTM store, and they had a 390 motorcycle. I went 390 Duke. Uh, I just said I want to do a test ride, and they said okay. I test rode it, and for me, when I rode the motorcycle, I just felt very connected to my dad. So I think that was a connect for me. And it took me 24 hours to pay them the money. It took me almost 72 hours to get the motorcycle, uh, and I've not stopped after that. Right? So
Wow.
yeah, so that's what changed. And
Yeah.
again, I'm spontaneous, right? So it had to happen spontaneously for me.
Right. Right. And you kept the bike for quite some time after that?
I still have it. I still A friend of mine is running it, but I still have the motorcycle. Yeah,
Okay.
I do. I picked up another
Yeah.
one very spontaneously around a year and a half ago, but
Okay.
yeah, but I still have both the motorcycles.
It's interesting, isn't it, that our connection to these inanimate objects, because of the memories that they
Yeah,
invoke
yeah,
or
yeah,
evoke, because
yeah,
it's not just the machine. There is a certain aspect to the machine which is part of, the features. But
Yeah.
there's another
Yeah.
part of memories which is irreplaceable because they are your memories on that machine. So that becomes something that is very dear and like a photograph. Some of
Absolutely.
these photographs,
Absolutely.
you watch them, you flip an album, and you're back to the time when that photograph was taken.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you started this whole thing by saying that your father just said, "Okay, drive." It's not as if he first gave you a lesson and then said, "Okay, do this, do this,
He
do
never
this.
did.
This is where." Yeah, he didn't even, which is unusual because most parents would be very careful about how they will initiate their children into riding the bike. Whereas at some point there is a mixture of, I don't know how to describe this, whether it is I'm on the bike, which means that he's safe. I'll figure out things as we go along. But there's,
Probably I could give you a backstory to this,
right?
which I probably haven't shared. Uh, I the year I was born, a year prior to that, my father lost his father. So my grandfather had passed.
Okay.
And he was one of the road contractors in Palakkad, right?
Okay.
He was a road contractor, and his wife was from Palakkad. That's my grandmother, and they used to live in Palakkad. And he used to ride Thorntons, the BSAs, the Nortons, the all the old motorcycles. He would ride, and he was very fast. And people would constantly come and complain. Even when he's riding a bicycle, he's very fast. And and to a large extent, a lot of complaints. So I would hear all these stories when I was growing up from my father. However, my father never rode a motorcycle till he was 32.
Okay.
He didn't even know how to ride a bicycle. He never did. Right?
Okay.
He learned to ride a motorcycle when he was 32 on the KB100, and that's the only motorcycle he rode. Uh, Only because my mom always wanted a husband who could drop her to the office on a motorcycle. So he learned motorcycling for her,
Okay.
and but he never wanted to. He never enjoyed riding the motorcycle. He had many accidents. I've fallen with him many times. Uh, So he never was crazy about motorcycles, but he always remembered his father riding motorcycles. And then he connected with me because I used to like riding motorcycles just like his father. So for him, I think that was his connect. And that's where
Okay.
he knew I would pick it up as a skill. You know,
Okay.
it was not something I would really struggle with. I'm sure he knew that.
You're right. No, it's fascinating because it's literally like the bike was the bridge between two generations, with the
Yeah.
middle generation saying, okay, your father saying, okay, it's something that my father liked. It's not necessarily something that I like doing. And you've actually found a whole new set of uh, inside
Actually,
experience.
three generations because I'm already initiating my 3-year-old daughter onto motorcycling. So the first time she rode a cycle, she was standing up and riding the cycle while I was pushing it.
Yeah,
And like, that's
yeah,
my daughter.
yeah. Well, you'll get to know in a few years whether she's just as passionate as you are, or whether,
Yeah.
but
Yep. Yep.
childhood experiences always have this way of,
Absolutely.
coming back to you in
Absolutely.
ways that you never expected or in the least known circumstances.
Yes.
Okay, so you had training experiences which went for over, 15, 16 years by this time. So, what was the trigger for looking at doing this on motorcycles?
Uh, so when I was in Chrysalis, I started motorcycling. I wanted to buy a Triumph Tiger 800, which was around 17 lakhs. And I want to invest in the motorcycle. I had no other liabilities. Unfortunately, dad had passed, and I'd gone through a separation at that point in time. Uh, and there's zero liabilities. I was free of financial burden, which was kind of holding me back to a large extent. Uh, and I started riding motorcycles. Met a lot of friends. One thing led to another. I met this friend who introduced me to another friend who was starting a motorcycle company in India. He was an Indian living in the US, and he had invested heavily on Triumph 800 motorcycles in India. He purchased five of them, and he wants somebody to run the company. So
Okay.
I rode the motorcycle. I took one of his motorcycles on rent for a week uh, to find my peace. The Christmas vacation, I went on a solo South India tour. Came back safe and sound. Motorcycle was spick and span. I handed back just as if it was my own. And he called me up after a week. I thought he was going to ask me more money because I'd probably uh, messed with the motorcycle. But
Okay.
interestingly, he called me and he said, "Hey, I have a offer for you. Would you be interested?" It took me 5 seconds to say yes. I put my papers down in Chrysalis. It took me 3 months to join him. Uh, and 2016, 2017, I ran Bow Adventure, which was a motorcycle adventure company.
Okay.
Uh, did tours to Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, Tawang, a lot of places. Rode the motorcycle, learned a lot about motorcycling, met a lot of people on motorcycles. Some beautiful stories, some amazing places I'd been to.
So
Unfortunately,
tell
the
us some of
motorcycle.
those stories. Tell us some of the stories that you can recall about why the bike became an intrinsic part of your life and why you ended up spending a lot of time on it.
Actually, even board ventures did not really spike that thought in my head.
Okay.
Board venture taught me that I like riding motorcycles, not leading people into tours or just showing them around, right? While I
Okay.
still lead people on tours, I think the journey itself should have something that bonds people. You have conversations, some meaning, some memories that you carry. But these rides I was running with the adventure tour company was just taking them from one place to another. We're constantly on the motorcycle. Uh, I was enjoying it, but it was a how do I say? There's no connect, there's no bonding, there's no conversation, and people who are coming in also came in only for the ride. Nobody wanted to connect, right? And somewhere
So typically, how
also
long would these rides last?
10, 12 days.
10, 12 days.
Yeah.
And every day, how long would you be riding?
Mostly we would ride at least 9 to 10 days. There'd be 1 or 2 days in between where we would take a break.
On any given day, you'd be riding for how many hours?
Depends. There are times some roads where there's no terrain at all. They're just carved roads between valleys, and you're riding. And probably it could be a distance of around 100, kilometers, but you're riding for 6, 7 hours because the road has streams. You have a lot of rocks that you have to cross. It's tough, and some people don't know how to ride the motorcycle, so you're helping them get the motorcycle across the stream. They falls. You need to take breaks. It's tiring. It's exhausting. Uh, so yeah, sometimes 8, 9 hours a day, sometimes even 10, 12 hours a day. Depends. Completely depends on the group, how quick they are, how good they are. If they're good, then you move faster. If they're not as much, then you kind of lead them slow, which means the amount of time it takes is much longer.
So, by riding in groups, you understood you were basically, like you mentioned earlier, driving with a group of people whose only interest was in riding and not connecting. But for
Hmm.
you personally, in your mind space, did you feel that you were in a better frame of mind than while sitting in an office?
Uh, I think that was the biggest challenge because I was the only person in the company. As head of operations, as doing their sales, as doing renting, as probably doing everything. And a lot of direction would come in from my boss come partner from US. And he would call me up late in the night when it was morning for him, and he would give me a complete download. And I think somewhere he was unable to give me direction, and
Okay.
I didn't know how to run a business. And he chose the wrong person to run a business. His expectation was for me to do everything. And Facebook was new. There's no Instagram back then. We were not on LinkedIn. LinkedIn was just starting up. Uh, so social media promotion, where to promote, what to do. There's a lot of strategy, a lot of tactical perspectives that I had to bring in, which I was not too sure about. And as the only one, nobody to brainstorm with. Uh, so I think I grappled with that phase a lot. And one of the reasons also was there's something called Raid the Himalayas, which is a rally which happens across from Manali to Leh. Uh, Tough terrain, and nobody gives rental motorcycles, but a few people came from Dubai who took those motorcycles, and the bikes were ruined at the end of it. So it
Okay.
took us almost 6 to 8 months to fix those bikes and kind of get back into business. And that was a huge loss. Even though I told my partner not to do it, he insisted and we gave it. And we kind of lost a lot of time and money and momentum that we had built. I think by then I was kind of not too happy with, what all I had to do because it was overwhelming and I had no help. I think that's where I started losing interest. While motorcycling and biking was my interest, uh, I kind of started losing interest in running the business because that was 95% of what I had to do.
Okay.
So that's where I think things changed, and I came back into training around 2016, 2017, June. It's around 7 years now. I came back into training, and interestingly, my previous partner at Transform Me kind of helped me work or handle the India business. I was one of the partner directors. So I was managing finance, I was managing training, I was doing recruitment. So I think there I got a lot of understanding of business and how to run it, what is required. And I think over the last 7 years, I think I've picked that part of what I have to do.
Okay.
And that's all that led to Motor Mentor because all of that kind of came together. Now my understanding of business, brand building, what I should be doing, uh, social media understanding to some extent, networking skills, motorcycling skills, of course. Uh, so yeah, so all of that kind of came together, and
Yeah.
this was just after COVID, where I was talking to my wife and I was telling her I like coaching and I like motorcycling, and she said, "Why don't you bring both of them together? Why don't you do something?" It was as
Okay.
simple as that. It was a
Okay.
normal conversation around 2.5 years ago, which changed everything for me.
Okay.
After that, I spent like 2 months coming up with a name. Motor Mentor came up. Uh,
It's a lovely
then,
name, Vivek, because
thank you.
it's because it's
Yeah,
really about motors and mentors. So
yeah. And this was an idea that my mother-in-law gave me. She
okay.
gave me the name. Why don't
Okay.
you call it Motor Mentor? And kind of that caught on.
Right.
So I designed the logo.
Right.
I bought a website, domain name. I'd done everything, but I never took the
Right.
plunge.
Okay.
Uh, I think it was just last year when my previous organization, the vision was very different. They want to grow larger, they want to move faster, they want to go bigger. And I had a 2.5-year-old at home. They were living in Chennai, I was living in Bangalore. Tough times to balance both. Uh, and stress was very, very high. Sales focus was very high. And you know me and sales, right? So we never got along. Uh, and so I took a sabbatical for 2 months uh, and I took a break. I almost rode some 2,500 odd kilometers solo, uh, and I read, I introspected a lot. And towards the end of it, I also went for Vipassana for 10 days, which was the icing on the cake. And after all this, I came back and I said, "Yep, I'm done. I think
Okay.
it's time to start Motorment."
It's almost as if these moments of realization for you, it was literally about taking off, and riding a bike sort of freed your mind up just as much as for most people it could be taking a holiday, but for you, like you said, solo trip for 2500 kilometers is a lot of riding.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to if you do that instinctively, then you know that that is what is working for you,
absolutely.
because I think we return to our mode of comfort at a point when we really want to take those difficult decisions. So how have you structured your entire motor mentor program?
So it was a beautiful process that I went through for the last 4 months.
Okay.
While the idea was only to focus on leaders, it became a very niche crowd and it was not very scalable. So I spoke to a lot of people, and that's where I started interacting with people, telling them what my plans are, and they started giving me ideas. There are a lot of people I don't know who reached out to me on LinkedIn, on Insta, and they said, "Hey, can we have a conversation?" And they shared some perspectives. I think all of that, what it led to right now is it's so I do life coaching virtually. So I still do coaching. I still do freelance training programs for my previous organization. Apart from this, I still do lead tours for some of the companies who run motorcycle tours.
Right.
So all these are kind of on the sidelines that I still do. But my main goal with Motor Mentor is where people who want to learn to ride a motorcycle or who know how to learn how to ride a motorcycle uh, join me on this tour. I have probably around 3 or 4 people riding with me on the tour. Uh, One of the first ones I ran was 2 weeks ago to Collie Hills, which was 72 hairpin bends in a span of, I think, 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers one way, and then 75 hairpin bends backed up, right? And then we went to Yerkard and we stay there and we have some coaching conversations, some meaningful conversations. And the next morning, which was Sunday afternoon, we leave and we come back to Bangalore. So it's almost 650 plus kilometers of riding, uh, with kind of me pushing them into bad roads, into offbeat roads, into curvy roads, and kind of really looking at their rider psychology. That's the core. Uh, and how do they throttle? How do they pack? When they take a break, how do they interact with people? Do they engage in conversations or are they disconnected? Are they heavy on braking? How do they ride on the curve? Are they reckless? You know, what is the risk factor that they take? So these are things I observe. And I also give them a questionnaire before we go on a tour, uh, which has some of these questions listed. So I'm kind of evaluating them based on the responses that they've given. And I kind of also have an assessment on them that I do. So together it comes up with a rider psychology assessment. And I have also worked out an assessment where the rider psychology is connected to behavioral psychology,
Okay.
right? To a large extent. I want to still build it based on science over a period of time, get some more validation, get more people to answer that, and go on a ride with them, and make it more scientific at some point in time. But I think that's what it is because your motorcycle riding, your behaviors, once you get into the zone, become very natural. And that replicates or mirrors your natural real time behavior because behaviors don't change. It's just how
Right.
you show them that change, right? So motorcycle is one way of me noticing that behavior, having that conversation, being that mirror for them, and probably offering them something that would help change a lot of things for them.
How do you go about observing this riding behavior? Are you behind them, or are you at some point riding alongside and then seeing, making mental notes? What is the thing that goes through your mind?
Um, so yeah, mostly I'm leading them. So one
Okay.
is if I'm the leader, are you ready to follow a leader? Right?
Okay.
And a lot of times it does happen that even if I'm leading and I'm going slow, one person is so restless that they want to go fast and they overtake me and slow down. Again, overtake and slow down. When I have to take a left and I've stopped so that I can gather everyone else together and then take that turn, this person will overtake me and then stop. So consistently. So those are some behaviors I notice. Also behaviors on how do they pack, um, even when they talk and when they have to kind of pack up and leave after a break, what do they do? How do they interact with other people in the group? In the evening, when we're just sitting and probably having a drink, how do they engage? How do they pack their luggage? Or do they constantly keep asking, "Hey, I forgot this. Can you stop somewhere?" Blah, blah, blah. So all of this, do they listen? Do they don't? How quickly do they rev the accelerator? Uh, you know, everything. Or they're too slow. They're on the other side. They're riding very slow. They expect everyone to, keep up to their pace. Their frustrations, you know. So all of this, I think it's just a natural thing to notice all of this. And I just make a mental note of it. If required, I kind of probably put it on my mobile, kind of make a few statements and notes if required.
And then is the feedback one on one, or is it as a group?
So ideally, I would love for it to be one-on-one only. I haven't done it yet. Uh, and So I have an initial assessment online that they take. Then I fill up an assessment for each individual, and I kind of collate all of that after the tour, and I generate a report, which again has some tips of what to do, what not to do. And I would like to share that with them. This is a curriculum that I built, which I want to start doing over time. Uh, and basis that I want them to come up to me if they want to have more conversations and get coached. Again, I don't want to insist that they should get coached by me, but I can just give them some perspectives that would probably direct them or guide them in a particular direction or a path.
Okay.
But yeah, if they turn around and say, you know what, can you be my mentor, coach? Absolutely.
Great, Vivek. Any closing thoughts on how you would like to tell people who are unsure about what they want to do or trying to decipher what is the way ahead?
I think it's a fairly dark quote which I'd written when I was in college, but I think it's not as dark as I think it is. The quote was, "Why suffer life when you can live death?" Uh,
Wow.
Fairly deep. Back then, I was in college, I'd written something random, but I think today it makes a lot of sense for me because a lot of people are struggling, grappling with things. They don't seek help, they don't reach out for help, and they suffer every single day. But if at all you can liberate yourself uh, and do something you've never done before and find joy in doing that, I think you live through that, adventure. I think that's what brings you closer to that, but it still gives you the perspective of saying, what's my true potential? What can I push myself to do? I think that's the true meaning of life for me. Yeah.
Fabulous. It's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you, Vivek. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I
Thank you
wish
so
Moto
much.
Mentor the very best. And I
Thank you.
think the difference that you make, even if it's in the lives of a small number of people, that change is going to be pretty significant. Thank you for coming
Thanks.
on the My First Job podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My First Job, the podcast, is a production from Ideascape Communications. Guest relations, promotions, and creative is managed by Deepa Ravi with occasional support by Venu Gopal Nair. Archiving and technical help is provided by LPS Jayachandran. We'll be back with another guest next week. Please continue to watch and subscribe to My First Job, the podcast. And thank you as always for listening.